It started with a river, a quiet, unassuming stretch of water in King County, Washington. But in 1982, it began whispering secrets, dark, terrible secrets. The body of a young woman was found floating in the Green River, face down, strangled. Within days, more bodies surfaced. Each woman had been killed the same way, strangled, abused, discarded like trash. It was no longer a tragic coincidence. Seattle had a serial killer. The first victims were often sex workers and vulnerable women who vanished from the streets with barely a trace. Their disappearances went unnoticed by most. But the Green River didn't keep secrets for long. More bodies appeared, dumped in clusters, often near the water or hidden in wooded areas. Fear spread like wildfire. The press called him the Green River Killer, and the name stuck like blood to pavement. Police were overwhelmed. The killer was meticulous, leaving little forensic evidence. He picked women who were hard to trace, from lives already lived on the edge. His methods were brutal but eerily consistent. He strangled his victims with his bare hands or with ligatures, shoelaces, ropes, even their own clothing. Then he'd dump the bodies in the woods, rivers, or remote spots only he seemed to know. What made the case more terrifying was how fast the bodies stacked up. Within a few months, the death toll reached into the double digits. The public was terrified, but investigators were frustrated. They had no name, no face, just a growing list of the dead. The killer wasn't just taking lives, he was erasing them, removing their identities, reducing them to evidence in a growing For nearly 2 decades, Gary Ridgway walked among us, ordinary on the outside, a storm of cruelty on the inside. As the 1980s faded into the 1990s, the Green River Killer case grew colder. The bodies had slowed, the headlines had quieted, but for the families left behind, the horror never ended. Dozens of mothers, sisters, daughters gone, no justice, no answers, no peace. What nobody realized was that the killer had already been questioned, his DNA already collected, and his name already in the case file. But the technology hadn't caught up. Yet. Then came the breakthrough. In the late 1990s, forensic science leapt forward. DNA testing became more precise, more powerful. Old evidence was re-examined. The sample taken from Gary Ridgway back in 1987 was put through modern analysis, and the results hit like a thunderclap. The DNA matched semen found on the victims. Suddenly, the quiet truck painter from Auburn, Washington wasn't just a suspect, he was the killer. The one they'd been chasing for nearly 20 years. On November 30th, 2001, Gary Ridgway was arrested. Calm, blank-faced. He didn't resist, didn't cry, didn't even blink. It was as if he had been waiting for it. The interrogation room became a theater of horror. He confessed with chilling ease. One by one, the names and faces of the dead returned, as Ridgway calmly described how he lured women into his truck, strangled them, and dumped their bodies like garbage. No emotion, no remorse. What shocked detectives most wasn't just the number of victims, it was how normal he seemed. He cried when talking about his dog, smiled when asked about his job. But when it came to murder, he spoke like someone describing a routine chore. He admitted to killing at least 71 women, though the real number could be higher. Some were killed in the woods, some in his home, others right inside his truck. Many he revisited, returning to their remains days or even weeks later to commit acts that can't even be repeated here. He chose women who wouldn't be missed quickly, mostly sex workers, runaways, and vulnerable women on the margins. He pretended to be a customer, offered them money, gained their trust just enough, and then snapped into violence. He'd sometimes kill multiple women in the same week, His method was always strangulation, often with items already on hand, shoelaces, cords, even their own clothing. Then he'd hide the bodies in remote areas, sometimes marking graves with beer bottles or other personal items, a twisted way of remembering them. He didn't just kill, he hunted. And even when he stopped, actively murdering, the knowledge of what he'd done and what he'd gotten away with seemed to satisfy something dark and broken inside him. Ridgway later said killing was his career. It gave him a thrill nothing else could match. "I killed so many women I can't even remember the names," he told investigators. That line alone chilled the world, faced with overwhelming evidence. And in a bid to avoid the death penalty, Ridgway struck a deal. He agreed to lead investigators to the remains of more victims in exchange for life in prison. He took them to the hidden places, the forest paths, the riversides, the shallow graves he thought the world would never find. With every discovery, another grieving family received a brutal kind of closure. In 2003, Gary Ridgway officially pleaded guilty to 48 counts of aggravated murder, at the time, the most by any serial killer in U.S. history. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But the true horror wasn't in the number. It was in the emptiness in his eyes, the mechanical way he described each death. He didn't kill out of hate. He killed because he could. Even now, Ridgway sits behind bars in Washington State Penitentiary, alive, aging, and largely unrepentant. He once said he picked prostitutes because he thought he could get away with it, and for years, he was right. But his legacy isn't just one of death. It's a reminder of how evil can wear a mask of normalcy. How a man with a steady job, a wife, a house, and a friendly smile can also be one of the most prolific killers in American history. His crimes shattered families, haunted investigators, and reshaped the way law enforcement approaches missing person cases, especially when the victims come from vulnerable communities. Gary Ridgway didn't just leave behind bodies. He left behind fear, scars, and questions that may never be answered. This isn't just a story about a killer. It's a story about the darkness that can hide in plain sight, about how monsters don't always live in shadows. They can live next door. They can walk among us unnoticed, unsuspected, until it's too late. If this story disturbed you, if it shocked you, or if it made you realize how thin the line between ordinary and evil truly is, then you're in the right place. Like this video to support deep, real-life storytelling. Subscribe for more spine-chilling true crime content, and don't forget to share it with others who need to know that sometimes the scariest part of any story is that it really happened.